Hollywood has a way of creating legends, faces that seem untouchable, careers that appear flawless, and lives that glimmer under the brightest lights. But sometimes, behind the glamour and acclaim, there are stories of quiet heartbreak, struggles hidden from the world. Michelle Pfeiffer, one of the most iconic actresses of her generation, has always been celebrated for her talent, beauty, and versatility. From Scarface to Dangerous Liaison, she commanded the screen, embodying characters with depth and nuance that left audiences breathless. Yet for all the applause and accolades, there has been a shadow lingering behind the curtain. At 67, Pfeiffer reflects on a life filled with both triumph and tragedy, a life that the public only glimpsed in fragments. The challenges she faced were not just about fame, aging, or the pressures of Hollywood. They were deeply personal, shaping her in ways her fans never knew, through whispers and interviews, subtle admissions, and the rare candid moments. A portrait emerges of a woman who endured loss, heartbreak, and struggles that could have broken anyone. Yet she endured. She persevered. She thrived. And now, as she looks back on decades of success, the truth she reveals is raw, emotional, and beyond heartbreaking. It is a story that asks the world to see not just the actress, but the human being behind the legend. Because for Michelle Pfeiffer, the real drama has never been on screen. It has always been in life itself. Long before the bright lights of Hollywood, Michelle Pfeiffer was just a girl in Santa Ana, California, dreaming bigger than her surroundings could contain. Born in 1958 into a close-knit family, Michelle was quiet, observant, and driven in ways that often went unnoticed. While other kids played carefree, she was captivated by stories, characters, and the transformative power of performance. It was clear early on that she was destined for something extraordinary, even if the path wasn't obvious. Her early career was anything but glamorous. Pfeiffer didn't have a lineage of Hollywood connections or the instant appeal studios often demanded. Instead, she relied on sheer determination. In her late teens and early 20s, she pursued modeling jobs, commercials, and small acting roles. Each audition brought rejection, humiliation, or indifference. Many would have given up, but Michelle carried a quiet resilience. She understood that success was rarely immediate. It was earned through persistence, patience, and relentless self-belief. By the late 1970s, she began landing minor film roles that showcased glimpses of her raw talent. Her first appearances were small, sometimes forgettable, but each role strengthened her skills and honed her ability to immerse herself fully into a character. Critics started to notice something beyond her stunning beauty, a depth, a subtle intensity that hinted at the powerhouse performer she would become. The mid-1980s marked the turning point. Films like Scarface, The Witches of Eastwick, and Lady Hawkeye propelled her into stardom. Hollywood finally saw what longtime fans had known. Michelle Pfeiffer was more than a pretty face. She had an unmatched ability to convey vulnerability, strength, and nuance simultaneously. She could be glamorous and fierce, tender and commanding, a duality that made her unforgettable on screen. Yet, with the rise of fame, came the pressures of an industry that seldom shows mercy. Pfeiffer found herself under constant scrutiny, her looks, performances, and personal life dissected by tabloids and critics alike. Fame brought opportunity, but it also brought a relentless spotlight that illuminated not only her achievements, but also her fears, doubts, and insecurities. Even at her career's peak, she carried the invisible weight of expectation. Off-screen, the challenges were equally daunting. Hollywood demanded perfection, and Pfeiffer often struggled to reconcile her personal authenticity with the manufactured images the industry projected. Behind closed doors, she experienced moments of loneliness, self-doubt, and the quiet sadness that rarely reaches headlines. These struggles were the beginning of a series of personal tragedies that would shadow her life for decades. Despite it all, Michelle's star continued to rise. She became one of the most respected actresses of her generation, lauded not just for her beauty, but for her dedication to craft, emotional depth, and the magnetic presence that commanded attention whenever she entered a room. Audiences adored her, studios coveted her, and peers admired her. Yet few could see the personal battles that accompanied her ascent. By the end of the 1980s, Michelle Pfeiffer had achieved what many could only dream of: fame, critical acclaim, and a place in cinematic history. But the public only saw the glamour. Behind the curtains, the weight of expectation, isolation, and emerging personal tragedy began to shape a life that was far more complicated and heartbreaking than anyone could imagine. By the 1990s, Michelle Pfeiffer had firmly established herself as one of Hollywood's most revered actresses. Films like Batman Returns, Dangerous Minds, and What Lies Beneath demonstrated her versatility, her capacity to disappear into a role while radiating star power. To the world, she seemed untouchable, glamorous, talented, and effortlessly poised. Yet behind the camera and away from the applause, a different story unfolded, one marked by personal challenges, heartbreak, and profound loneliness. Despite her professional success, Pfeiffer's personal life was often complicated. She faced pressures that went far beyond the scrutiny of the tabloids. The intense demands of fame weighed heavily on her, affecting relationships and her sense of normalcy. Roles that required long hours, intense emotional performances, and constant public appearances left little room for personal reflection or healing. Hollywood, while rewarding, was exhausting, a machine that consumed those who entered it, leaving them raw and vulnerable. Marriage and family brought joy, but also added another layer of challenge. Pfeiffer's relationships were often tested by her career and the public gaze. Even when surrounded by love, there was the ever-present struggle to balance her own needs with those of her family and the relentless demands of her profession. Moments that should have been private and peaceful were often interrupted by media intrusion or public speculation, creating a constant tension she could never fully escape. Health and emotional well-being became increasingly significant. Long periods of stress and overwork took a toll on Pfeiffer physically and mentally. There were times when she questioned her choices, wondering if the sacrifices were worth the accolades and attention. In interviews, she would occasionally hint at these struggles, but the full weight of her experiences remained largely hidden. Perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of this period was the sense of isolation. Surrounded by people every day on set and at premieres, Pfeiffer often felt profoundly alone. The demands of maintaining her public image meant that her vulnerabilities could rarely be shared, even with close friends. Hollywood could be forgiving of mistakes on screen, but off-screen, it offered little room for imperfection or humanity. Despite the challenges, Michelle continued to deliver performances that captivated audiences. Her dedication to her craft never wavered, and her ability to portray complex, layered characters remained unmatched. Yet, as the 1990s drew to a close, it became increasingly clear that the personal sacrifices she had made in pursuit of excellence had left lasting emotional scars. The tragedy of Michelle Pfeiffer's life, often invisible to the public eye, lay not in the absence of success, but in the quiet struggles she endured. Behind the very spotlight that made her a legend, her story was one of brilliance and heartbreak intertwined. A reminder that even the most admired figures often carry burdens the world will never fully see. As Michelle Pfeiffer moved into her late 40s and 50s, the public continued to see her as a glamorous, untouchable star. But behind the perfectly composed images and red carpet smiles, she faced personal tragedies that tested her resilience in ways no movie could portray. Life, despite her immense success, was far from the fairy tale many imagined. One of the most profound challenges came in balancing family and career. Pfeiffer had always dreamed of both a fulfilling personal life and a legendary acting career, yet Hollywood's demands often made these goals feel at odds. Her marriage, while loving, required sacrifices from both partners. Long filming schedules, media attention, and the pressures of fame created a tension that could not be easily escaped. Pfeiffer often found herself juggling motherly duties, intimate relationships, and the relentless expectations of her profession, leaving her emotionally stretched and vulnerable. Health struggles also added to her trials. Years of intense work, stress, and high expectations left physical and emotional scars. Pfeiffer faced moments of exhaustion, self-doubt, and anxiety that contrasted sharply with the confident, poised persona she presented to the world. The public rarely saw the toll this invisible burden took, yet for Pfeiffer, it was ever present, a quiet weight that colored her every decision. Then there were losses that pierced the heart more deeply. Close friends, mentors, and colleagues who had once shared in her journey passed away, leaving voids that fame could never fill. Each tragedy reminded her of life's fragility and the impermanence of even the brightest success. The Hollywood spotlight, which once seemed a source of joy, now highlighted her solitude and the personal costs of living in public view. Despite these hardships, Pfeiffer remained extraordinarily resilient. She returned to the screen with performances that conveyed more depth than ever, channeling her pain into her art. Yet, every role was also a reminder of the life she had had to navigate off-screen, a life of sacrifices, of struggles endured quietly, and of heartbreak hidden behind the allure of celebrity. By her mid-60s, Pfeiffer had endured a lifetime of extraordinary highs and deeply painful lows. The world saw the triumphs, the accolades, and the beauty. But few understood the cost of that life, the heartbreak, the emotional strain, and the quiet tragedies that left an indelible mark on her soul. Michelle Pfeiffer's story, at its core, is a testament to human resilience. It is a reminder that even those we idolize, who seem untouchable in the public eye, often carry burdens and heartbreaks far beyond what anyone could imagine. Her life is proof that behind every legendary career, there may be untold sorrow and struggle shaping the person behind the star. At 67, Michelle Pfeiffer's life reads like a storybook of both brilliance and heartbreak. The world knows her as a Hollywood icon, the actress whose performances have mesmerized generations, whose beauty and elegance are timeless. But behind the glamour lies a life shaped by profound challenges, personal loss, and silent struggles that few have glimpsed. For decades, Pfeiffer balanced the duality of fame and private sorrow. The demands of Hollywood were relentless: long shooting schedules, media scrutiny, and the constant expectation to remain flawless. On top of that, she faced the emotional strain of maintaining a private life in a public world. Family responsibilities, relationships, and the need for personal space often clashed with career demands, leaving her exhausted yet determined to persevere. These struggles were invisible to most, yet they carved deep marks on her soul. Pfeiffer's reflections reveal the weight of those experiences. She speaks openly about the moments when the pressure felt unbearable, when she questioned whether the sacrifices were worth it, when loneliness crept in despite being surrounded by accolades and admiration. These were the private tragedies of her life, the moments behind the curtain that no audience could see. Yet, through it all, Pfeiffer demonstrated extraordinary resilience. She learned to navigate the complexities of fame without losing her core self, cultivating strength from both her triumphs and her hardships. Her career, she explains, became both a sanctuary and a mirror. Roles that demanded emotional intensity allowed her to process her own pain, turning personal struggles into art that resonated deeply with audiences. Every performance carried a piece of her lived experience, her fears, vulnerabilities, and triumphs. In this way, her work was not just entertainment. It was a testament to endurance, honesty, and emotional truth. Even amidst loss and heartbreak, Pfeiffer found ways to nurture her family and protect her inner life. She carved out private spaces away from the public eye, where she could heal and reflect. She emphasizes the importance of self-care, of recognizing that personal well-being is essential for sustaining creativity and joy. These lessons, learned over decades of navigating a demanding industry, have shaped her into a woman who stands strong, yet empathetic, wise, and deeply human. The tragedy of Michelle Pfeiffer is not a story of defeat but of survival and resilience. It is a reminder that even the most celebrated figures endure hardships, and that fame does not shield anyone from the trials of life. Yet, through courage, determination, and a commitment to authenticity, she has emerged stronger. Her legacy enriched not only by her performances but by her remarkable ability to endure, adapt, and grow. Now, reflecting on her life, Pfeiffer embodies a rare balance, an icon who has faced heartbreak and survived it, a woman whose personal struggles have deepened her artistry, and a human being whose resilience shines as brightly as any on-screen performance. At 67, she stands as living proof that strength often emerges from tragedy, and that the greatest victories are those won quietly within the human heart.